Ryan Smith with the Trojan Sports Network for our first edition of the UMO Coaches Show with head men and women's golf coach Chip Spiron. Coach, you guys have had a couple of weeks of competition here. Obviously, the men have played 2 tournaments, the women have also played 2 tournaments. But first, let's kind of start off with your team this year. A lot of new faces, especially on the women's side. Just kind of go through and give us an outlook of the team this year and what people can expect to see from them.
Well, you're right on the women's team. The women's team is, we've got 5 new players, just 2 that returned. And so you're working with freshmen all the time, and they're nervous and scared, and they don't, they're not sure what to expect. And they're playing golf courses that they've never played before. They're playing yardages that they've never played before. The courses are longer, they're better, they're tougher, the rough's higher, the grasses are different than what they're used to. So there's a big adjustment for those 5 freshmen on the girls' side. Hopefully the 2 juniors that we had coming back will take those freshmen and help guide them throughout the year. Help them with the changes in the grasses and the changes of the golf course, how to play a practice round, and that sort of thing. On the men's side, we've got 3 new guys, and 2 are transfers and 1 freshman. So I've got a makeup of 8 juniors and a freshman. And so, you know, what I told them in the beginning of the year is, you know, with a team that old, we should be pretty good. And so far they've proven that. And the next 2 years should be a lot of fun for the guys' team, being as old a team as we're going to have for the next 2 years.
And something that's unique to your squads is that you guys do qualifying, and that's something that is not necessarily news to the golfing world as far as qualifying for a tournament, but for collegiate golf, it's not something that a lot of people see. You know, they see the golfer show up on the course and they just kind of think, well, those are the 5 best, or those are the, you know, the 5 people that could travel that week. But for you guys, qualifying is a little bit different, and I kind of had the opportunity to watch qualifying with you once, just kind of on your phone, seeing as they were shooting. But what is that like for incoming freshmen or transfers that maybe not had that kind of experience before? What is it like for them to, you're really competing to be in the starting lineup, and a lot of times that's not the same in other sports where you're just kind of well, you did really good in practice and you're in the starting lineup, or you've been here for so many years, you're a starter. Well, your starters can not play in a tournament. So what's that like for you guys?
Yeah, when you come in, everybody that comes in as a freshman was probably their best player on the team in high school. They didn't have to worry about qualifying or making a team. And all of a sudden they get on a team and they're one of 10 guys that could make a tournament. And so we use qualifying to try to figure out who the best 5 are that week leading up to a tournament. You know, if you want to make my life easier, let me substitute. Substituting would be great if you could substitute for different holes or different shots or you know, crazy things like that. But we only take 5 to a tournament, so that leaves 5 at home. You know, a lot of people don't realize that. We're probably one of the only sports that does do that, where we leave half the team at home for every tournament. But that qualifying, man, it's tough. It's brutal. It's one of the hardest things. They say they're more nervous over the qualifying than when they get to the tournaments, because they know, well, once I get to a tournament, I'm there. I don't have to worry about it. But they're more nervous going into those qualifiers because they know if they don't play well, they don't get to go on the trips.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating to watch that and know, at least from, you know, our side of it. You know, we could see 5 different people every single week, and it's not the same people, so it's a little bit of a switch for us.
Yeah.
Let's kind of get into the season so far. Obviously, the women's team have played in 2 tournaments thus far, and most recently, you guys are coming off a really tough field. And had a good finish considering the caliber of teams that you guys had. You know, and obviously the first tournament of the year was successful in that regard. But what do you guys take away from those tournaments? Obviously, when you were playing teams in the top 25 in the nation, you know, your expectations are a little bit different than if you're playing a normal field or just a general regional field. But this region is very tough. So what do you guys try to take away from that, just from the women's tournament side, and what were you happy to see and progress that you guys are going to look to make forward?
Well, you're right. Our region is the best region in the country. The national champion has come out of our region every year, but one, I believe. When we play in region, we're playing against the best teams in the country. When we travel south, you're talking about playing the #1 team, the #2 team, the #3 team, and we're a top 50 team at the moment. I think we can obviously get a lot better. But what surprised me so far is how good the freshmen really are, and what their potential is. It's really exciting to see that. When you have freshmen come in and they put the squeeze on the older players, and hey, just because you're older doesn't mean you're going to have that #1 spot or that #2 spot. That's a lot of fun to see, and they've proven that in the first 2 tournaments. This past tournament, we finished 14th out of 18, and that doesn't sound good until you realize who you're competing against.
Right.
And we were competing against 7 or 8 top 25 teams. It would be great to beat those teams, and we weren't that far off from beating those teams. We were 5 shots, and every coach can do this, but we were 5 shots from being a top 10 team in that tournament. Heck, we probably lost 5 shots in the last 2 holes each day.
Yeah, and you guys moved up in 2 spots, from round 1 to round 2, which is kind of a big jump considering that field.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and the funny thing was we didn't even play better the second day, and but that shows you how tough the course was and things like that as well. But I'm excited for the girls. The freshmen are they're gonna be good. They really are.
All right. Well, let's switch into the other team, since dual sports or same sport, dual teams.
Yeah.
The men obviously have done really well this year as well. It's kind of like a competing race between the men and the women to see who's going to finish better.
Always.
But it's great to see. But the men have done well. I mean, you guys, that's the thing with golf. You guys travel everywhere. I mean, you're in Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina. You could be anywhere, Tennessee. What's the travel been like for the guys, and what have you seen out of the 2 tournaments that they've played that you take away from them?
Yeah, well, first tournament was down in Kiowa in South Carolina, and then we went to St. Augustine down in Florida. And both of those tournaments, again, great fields. Top 25 teams were at both the tournaments. As far as the standpoint of how we did, I thought we did great. I think that both tournaments was really interesting because the level of play was so close. After the first round of each tournament, well, the second tournament was 54-hole tournament, so it was after the first 36 holes.
Right.
It seemed everybody was kind of bunched up. Mm-hmm. And generally, you might have the leader, and then maybe 30 shots later, you got the guys in last place. The first 2 tournaments, it was 10, 15 shots between a first place and a last place. Mm-hmm. And what that shows you is how good our region and I guess sub-region or whatever you want to call it, is. When we travel, we're playing against the best teams, and that's what I've always wanted to do and what I've always preached. Hey, we're going to play against the best teams, and sure, we could pad our schedule and win more trophies and what have you, but I'd rather go play the top teams. That being said, these guys are competing against them every time, and it's such a close race that one shot here or there is always going to make a difference. And I've got a couple of guys that are playing a little bit better than the rest of them on the team right now, and that's really, really exciting.
And I believe the men have almost a month off until their next tournament. Is that correct?
Yeah, we usually this is the first time we've done that. We've had a tournament. We did decide not to go to it this year.
Right.
We had been playing 5 tournaments in the fall. One thing a lot of people don't know is that our season counts in the fall.
Right.
It's just as important as the spring, even though we're considered a spring sport. But we decided not to play a 5th tournament in the fall this year, and that gave us that little bit of gap. and our next tournament is at Elon, which is a Division I school. And they, because of how we've played over the years, and our rankings and things like that, they invited us a couple of years ago. So we've been going to Elite Elon the last couple of years.
How do you guys, how does practice evolve in that big of a time frame? Obviously, every sport has their different ways of keeping the players focused and different things like that. But what specifically for the men's team having that much amount of time off do you guys do differently? Especially this year, like you said, it's a new thing that you guys are doing. And obviously giving them rest is always helpful, kind of helps the body to heal a little bit. But what are you guys doing different, at least for the men's team, for this big time off?
Yeah, well, I looked at that before the season started, and I decided we were going to play a lot. And I'm making sure that each time we play, it counts. It counts for something. And they're keeping their stats, and they're, when I say it counts, I'm saying, hey, if you don't play well, maybe you don't get to qualify later on. And so during this time, we're playing, and we're playing a lot. And then we'll also have qualifying mixed in there. And then rather than maybe a 36-hole qualifier, maybe we make it a 72-hole qualifier. And then that brings out the competition that we were lacking from not going to another tournament.
And for the women, they'll be heading to the Myrtle Beach Intercollegiate next up for them. Kind of give us a preview of the field and what you expect for. Obviously, we don't know who's playing yet because you guys haven't qualified. But what do you expect out of that field? Because you guys have played in that tournament every single year.
Yeah.
So what do you expect out of that field this year? Well,
it's always a good field. They've always had 16, 18 teams. There's a lot of teams there. It's not as strong a field because it's made up of less of the Florida schools. Matter of fact, probably no Florida schools. Right. So it's not as deep a field. So our expectation going in is a little higher because of that automatically. And I think that based on how we've played so far, not that we're going to go in as a favorite or anything like that, but I think that a top 5 finish is definitely something that we should look forward to.
All right, Coach. Well, we appreciate your time, and we'll catch up with you next week.
Okay.
For head women's and men's golf coach Chip Spiron, I'm Ryan Smith for the UMO Coaches Show.
Exceptional degrees at an exceptional value. That's transforming education. The University of Mount Olive, transforming education, transforming lives. Learn more at umo.edu. That's umo.edu.